Good afternoon and welcome to the Crowded Booth. This is Bryce Coon alongside John Coon. The sun's shining, birds are singing. It's a great day to talk about sports. Don't forget, if you want to catch any of our latest news or where we're going to be or how you can watch, it's going to be on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at the Crowded Booth.
All right, today we're coming to you live from Phenix City, Alabama. We're in the Giovanna's restaurant. It's here located at 614 16th Street in Phenix City, Alabama. Giovanna's is a family cook-to-order restaurant. Their hours are Monday through Friday from 11:30 to 8, and they're open on Saturday, 12 to 8, closed on Sunday. And something fascinating about Giovanna's, out of the 63 restaurants in the Phenix City area, Giovanna's was voted number one, and they are also voted the best pizzeria in Columbus and Phenix City. Their food, some of the food that they're famous for, calzones, gyros, and Cubans. Also great pizza. Kind of like the stuff you would find like in Philly or Chicago or Miami. So come on down when you can. Nelson and Jeanette Rodriguez are the owners of Giovanna's. It's a great place to eat. Like I say, it's open 5 days a week. Monday through Friday from 11:30 to 8, and on Saturday from 12 to 8. So now we're going to go into the Take Two little segment that we're going to start.
Yes, we're going to have this Take Two segment where John and I both take 60 seconds to review what happened on Monday night. And if you don't know what happened Monday night, I don't know where you were. The Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl that we previewed last week, we're going to knock that out. So I'm going to take 60 seconds real quick and preview the Rose Bowl. If you could have one word as I'm starting, one word is going to be incredible, possibly the greatest college football game I've ever been able to watch, ever been able to see, and especially in the fact that it's my hometown favorite team, Georgia, that is in the game, made it even better. One thing I did, the defense made adjustments. That was one of the biggest things. Baker Mayfield played like a Heisman Trophy winner. I think they took the ball out of his hands there in the second half. They should have let him operate when you got that much time left and you have a lead. I think you should give Baker Mayfield the ball and say, go win it for us.
Right.
But Georgia's defense did an incredible job. Great job by Mel Tucker and Kirby Smart to get in halftime. They didn't do anything different. They just played great. And I think that's the story, is they got some stops, came out there, and special teams played well.
Very well.
As well as Lorenzo Carter, standing at 6'7", he was able to block that field goal. The kickoff, which we'll talk about later, where we were able to snag and get some points. So great job by Georgia's defense of rallying around. And also, one final thing, Jake Fromm's poise. We knew the rushing attack was going to be great, but Jake Fromm going 20 for 29 with 210 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's phenomenal.
Did what he had to do. All right, for my 60 seconds, I'm going to talk about Clemson and Alabama. What you can say about that is when you give Nick Saban that amount of time and Jeremy Pruitt that amount of time and get some players healthy, the linebacker core was depleted when it played Auburn, and they got those guys back. The best thing that could happen to them probably was not to play in the SEC championship game. And they totally dialed it up to dominate Clemson's offense. They seemed like they were totally out of rhythm. Nothing really worked, and it just seemed like it just cascaded from there. They'd make one mistake and almost get back in the game, and then, the big interception, pick six. What I think really happened is the trenches were won by Alabama. Like Nick Saban has been saying, they refound their identity. They knew that they were a team that could be powerful in the trenches, both on the defensive and offensive side of the ball. And the offense just got the push on what in the country people thought Clemson's defense was the best. 24-6, they pretty much just they overtook them.
Yeah, definitely. Clemson played a great game. I mean, Clemson had played great games all year, but really that offense looked just like nothing against that tough Alabama defense, which, like we said in the preview, that was going to be the story.
Right.
In the trenches, and that's kind of the story. And I was watching something last night, that's kind of the whole story of everything. It doesn't matter how flashy the quarterback play is, and especially for this next game, if you can't, whoever team wins the trenches is definitely going to win with what it could be a physical game.
I think I remember Lou Holtz. You remember when he used to be on TV and he would talk about it all start, you have the flashy quarterback and the wide receivers and the running backs, but they can't do anything if the guys up front, if they don't do what they've got to do. So.
Yeah, definitely. Before we get into the national championship game preview, just want to highlight two local guys from around this area. So as we said before, we're in Phenix City, Alabama today, right across the river over at Brookstone High School in Columbus, where I went to school with Prather Hudson, who's playing at Georgia now. He's a sophomore there as a walk-on, but made an amazing tackle. And Scott Howard off Georgia's probably the best tackle. Yeah. And Scott Howard, the voice of Georgia football, voice of Georgia sports, was able to capture that well when he said that Prather Hudson got a leg of lamb on that guy. So, which was honestly a big
huge
tackle to pin Oklahoma deep into their own territory. So nice little job there seeing a former teammate of mine and a good friend have his moment in the spotlight. And then on the other side, a little bit farther down the road from Harris County High School, where there have been a plethora of Division I football players.
Right.
But Tate Crowder probably doesn't get as much notoriety. He's moved from running back, where Georgia's stacked. To linebacker, where Georgia is stacked as well.
Yep.
But is a key contributor on special teams. And you see that a lot with Nick Saban's teams, where they have some really good special teams players, and Georgia's starting to fill out that depth chart well on the special teams. But that kickoff right before halftime, he was able.
He was just in the right place at the right time. Yeah.
Which a lot of the guys on ESPN have said, oh, it ricocheted off a player, but he reached out and snagged that ball on the 50 and went and had the awareness to go down with time. And so that was a very smart play. So. And real quick, I don't think that was much of a Oklahoma issue, because if you do get the squib, then it works. But the play by Tate Crowder, who's a junior, to get that down, then Jake Fromm's quick out pass, the timeout by Kirby, and then Rodrigo Blankenship, which if you're watching any of the major networks, they are now in love. They realize what we've been seeing for the past year and a half.
Trey Wingo, just can't say enough about it.
Yeah, Trey Wingo couldn't say enough about him on Wingo and Golick. But that was definitely cool to see those two local guys making a big impact on a national stage, which I'm pretty sure they all dreamed of playing in a game like the Rose Bowl one day. So that was really cool to see those local guys, and just want to give a shout out to both Tate Crowder and Prather.
Right.
So as we get into the national championship game preview, probably better known as the SEC Championship Game 2.0.
That's a good way of looking at it,
If you've already bought your Georgia 2017 SEC Championship shirt and Georgia does not come out victorious, you might not want that shirt anymore. Because the Alabama fans are definitely excited about this one. They did not get the chance, even after a tough loss to Auburn. But probably they're definitely excited to get to play Georgia and not only see who's going to win the national championship, but that SEC crown, de facto SEC crown as well. I think it's going to be, like I said, the Alabama-Clemson game, we said that was going to be a very physical game. And for the most part it was, but it was Alabama dominating more physically than Clemson.
Right.
I think this one is going to be a very physical game. All the storylines surrounding Alabama, the juggernaut, at Georgia, not necessarily a newcomer, but a newcomer of this amount of greatness and power, this magnitude. They've always been a successful program. But they've definitely taken the next step under Kirby Smart, who was under Nick Saban. So that battle of Saban versus one of his assistants, which he's thoroughly dominated. We'll get that to a little bit later on.
Right.
So many storylines in this game, and we talked about, I think it's going to dominate in the trenches, but it's definitely an exciting game for SEC fans, Alabama, Georgia fans. I don't know how everyone else in the nation feels about it, but if you take aside the SEC effect that everyone, they say they have this SEC fatigue, well, it's just because the SEC is that good. And one thing I want to say on that, not trying to get too sidetracked, is was listening to, I think it was Colin Cowherd the other day, and he was saying he still feels that the Big Ten is a better conference overall, which
from top to bottom,
bottom, yes, they most likely are. They probably have stronger teams in that 6 to 10 range of their rankings, where he said it makes perfect sense. The SEC is more top heavy. They
kind of proved out in the bowl games.
Oh yeah, and then the Big Ten played very well in the bowl games. So, but that's something to keep an eye on. Is that storyline? An all SEC national championship game, the second one I think in 7 years. Before you go back to LSU and Alabama.
And Alabama dominated that one. Defense was the name of the game. LSU 0 points.
I don't think LSU got past the 50-yard line.
I don't think they did.
Alabama's known for this, and it's cool to see Georgia in this position after a whirlwind of a game in Pasadena, and having to fly all the way back. I don't think they got back to like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then had to get back to Athens probably around 4 or 5. So definitely it's going to be an interesting game. I think a lot of the storylines you have. The first off is Saban versus Kirby Smart. That's going to be the biggest one if you're going to watch ESPN, Fox Sports. It doesn't matter what you're going to be watching. that's going to be the biggest storyline for the entire thing.
I think these two teams know more about each other than any two teams in the country, but they haven't played each other.
Yeah, they've only played each other, I think.
The last
we had
time
down there, 2015, when they came to Athens and dismantled a Georgia team. I think
38 to 10
in the middle of Nick Chubb's streak, and I think that was the only highlight of the day. His long touchdown, which he had so many consecutive.
100
that was
yard
2 years
game,
ago, and then obviously. If you're a Georgia one, this is going to be a painful memory. For Alabama, it's going to be a great memory. 2012, my de facto national championship game for the Alabama-Georgia SEC championship game, where Aaron Murray threw the pass, and I think it was Chris Conley. I think he ends up catching the ball, but in
couple
bounds,
of yards short.
A couple yards short as time expires. So these games have huge magnitude and meaning. I know the Alabama-Georgia matchup was a top 10 matchup. So once again, these two teams battling for the national championship. But like you said, they have a lot of familiarity, both set up the same way. Kirby Smart pretty much brought the same mentality, wanted to instill that. It's completely changed the culture of the program there in Georgia. And it's, everyone's like, we want to be the Alabama of the East. Well, I think Georgia's going to do that, and what better way to declare yourself that than beating that same team?
Right. Like you said, you look at Saban's record against his former assistants, 11-0. He's beat, I think it's 5-6 coaches that are now at other teams, or not. Some of them are not even in other teams anymore.
Have a job, and probably because Saban beat them.
And another thing too, it's so much crossover here. Like Kirby was at Alabama, now he's at Georgia, but then you have Alabama's current defensive coordinator,
also Tennessee's head coach.
Yeah, and used to be at Georgia. So there's so many, like we say, there's so many similarities between these, or guys that seem like they have been either one place or another.
Well, and you definitely take that as well. You look at not only the coaches but the players. The states are right next to each other. You've got a lot of guys playing. When Kirby was there, University of Alabama did a great job of stealing recruits from Mark Rick and his staff from the State of State, Georgia. One thing you've seen, and this is completely different talk about recruiting, but Kirby Smart has really locked down the state of Georgia, keeping those guys, and then making them come at home. And so you got a lot of guys that
because wasn't Fromm was supposed to go to Alabama.
Fromm was committed to Alabama, and then when Smart came over, he was one of the first guys that Smart wanted to keep going after, was able to secure his commitment. But definitely these guys have played each other in the Alabama-Georgia game. They play over here for high school seniors.
Right.
So these guys have a familiarity. Some of them might have played, rival high schools together. So I think that school is a national championship because usually you don't get that. You have Alabama and Georgia, and sometimes it's maybe a Big Ten team. Not a lot of familiarity between, but definitely these two teams have similar style of play.
Right.
You get into what they're going to try to do. We know this is the thing. We know Georgia's going to try to run the ball. They have, I was reading something last night, they have a traditionally undersized offensive line. Mm-hmm. Those guys have done a great job.
Very physical.
Very physical for an undersized. And I think we saw that after the Auburn game, putting Ben Cleveland in, who is not undersized at all.
No.
He
goes about 340, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's a massive man. And standing there putting him at right guard, and I think that's made a big difference. He's a redshirt freshman or a sophomore. I think he's a redshirt freshman. And then Andrew Thomas, the right tackle. They've done a great job.
Yeah.
They did a really good job in the Oklahoma game. Yeah. He's a true freshman right tackle. He's done a great job.
Of course, Oklahoma's defensive line is not Alabama's defensive line.
I do not think Georgia will be running for 350 yards.
No, I don't see. You never know. I mean, they did break off a long run against Auburn, but I think at that time Auburn's defense was pretty much depleted, and that was toward the end of the SEC championship game.
And that was also a fresh running back.
Yeah, fresh running back. I don't think you'll see Michelle and Chubb breaking that long 75-yard run like they did in the Rose Bowl. I mean, they had 2 drives or 2 plays.
Yeah, 2 drives. I think it was Sony's 75-yard run, and then Chubb, who
50 or
looked
40.
a lot like that Marshawn Lynch run in the playoffs versus the Saints. I think someone put it out on Twitter, and that was mini beast mode right there, as he broke 3 tackles on his way.
But I think if Georgia, again, what's the storyline? And like we said before, it's going to be in the trenches. Who can push who off the ball? And like I say, I don't think Georgia will have the long runs. Those big ones, they may have, 7, 8, 10, 12-yard runs.
Yeah.
But Georgia, like you say, it's a two-headed monster. It's a running team. And this is what's so neat to me. Those guys are so unselfish. And now, even at the 15th game of the year, they're still in pretty good shape. I mean, they're really not nicked up.
Yeah, Georgia doesn't have a lot of injuries. I mean, you go on the other side, Alabama, their defense, definitely, we've always said Alabama's 2 deep depth chart is all 5 stars.
Right.
They've got the talent there.
Yeah, any second stringer at Alabama can play anywhere else in the country.
Anywhere else and start and be a starter. So I think that that's one thing. Like I said, Nick Chubb, he's been really fully healthy all year.
Yep.
Sony Michel, I think he got nicked up in the SEC championship game, but nothing serious. And that did not show at all as he won the offensive MVP on
That's right, yeah.
For the Rose Bowl. One thing we didn't see a lot of we didn't see a lot of DeAndre Swift. I think he had 2 carries, not really much of a factor, but I think that was just a result of Kirby Smart saying, hey, give it to the seniors and let's win it with them.
Yeah, because they're going to carry the load for you.
Yeah, they're definitely, I don't think it's any secret that they're going to carry the load. And then on the other side, we're talking about the run game. Georgia's had one of the top rushing attacks, if not the best rushing attack all year. I think I saw a stat the other day was Sony Michel and Nick Chubb combined for over 8,000 yards in their career.
That's a record?
That's a college football record for the best duo. So that
surpassed who are the guys from SMU a long time ago?
Oh, that was Eric Dickerson.
And Craig? Yes.
So they surpassed them, so becoming one of the best Russian running back duos, the best running back duo in college football history.
Right.
But on the other side of the ball, you see a guy that dominated we talked about this in the pregame for the Sugar Bowl, Bo Scarborough. He's massive. He can run to the trenches. I don't know if he's nicked up. He didn't get a lot of carries. We saw, like you said, I think Damian Harris had
19 carries.
19 carries, the most in his career. Right. He's a talented back as well, and I know they got a 3 and a 4 that could start.
I remember in the Sugar Bowl, they made a comment about when they got down close and they kept Harris in to run the ball. It made sense what they said because he was talking about it takes Scarborough a little bit to get going.
Yeah.
Where Harris is like almost full speed as soon as he takes off.
Yeah. Scarborough, I think we saw a couple runs against when they played Washington. That was the ones I was referring to in the pregame. When he was playing Washington, you saw him, he would get going 2 to 3 yards. And once he got going, I mean, he's a freight train. He's a massive running back.
Can you imagine him and Roquan running into each other at full speed?
That's one of the exciting things, both of these teams were top 5 in scoring defenses.
Yep.
I mean, it's not going to be, I would be shocked. I said this about the Oklahoma game. If it's a shootout, Oklahoma's going to win. Mm-hmm. I didn't think Georgia had the offensive firepower to do it. And credit to Jim Chaney for staying with the run game and saying, they can't stop our run game. Don't freak out and pass. But Jake Fromm played. Like we said, he's no longer a freshman. That game solidified him as a bona fide. I think he's a star to come in the SEC, and not because he's going to go out there and throw for 400 yards. I mean, Baker Mayfield won a Heisman because he does that. That's not how Jake Fromm is wired.
Jake Fromm, you got Kirby here, and Kirby, when he was at Alabama, what did he learn from Nick Saban? You got to have a quarterback that can manage the game, not make any mistakes, because when you make mistakes, you're almost giving points to the other team and taking them away from you. Alabama's championship runs, they always had the quarterback. Maybe he threw for 180 to 225 yards. But you didn't ask him to throw for 400.
Yeah.
He didn't have to sling it around the field 40 times. So they're a lot alike. Maybe Alabama's Hurts is a little bit better runner than Jake.
Yeah.
But, I think I mentioned this when we talked about the Rose Bowl. Don't count Jake out. I mean, the dude, when he has to, he can run.
He can pull it. He'll pull it from what's normally a zone read play, and he'll pull it. And those defensive ends, they've got to respect Nick Chubb and Sony Michel because they're talented.
Right.
Very talented. I think they average 9 yards per carry against Oklahoma. That's not going to happen. I mean, I would be very shocked if Georgia goes in there and runs for 350 yards.
If they cut that in half, and Georgia runs for 4 or 5 yards per. That's great against the Alabama defense. I think they held Clemson to 1.9 yards.
Yeah, Clemson was. I saw something on social media said the reason they won is because Deshaun Watson showed up. He was on the sideline for the game. That none of the mojo was right for Clemson for that game. But yeah, their run game was stifled by that dominant.
I saw a stat where the first time they played Alabama, the total yards were over 500. The second time it was over 500. This time it was under 200 for the total yards. for Alabama's defense to just completely shut them down, I think.
And I think that goes in, you're talking about Jake Fromm and the poise he showed. If you just watched it, you look at his stat sheet, no mistakes, 20 for 29, 210 yards, I think it was, and 2 touchdowns. That's all that Kirby Smart wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably better than they thought he would perform. I mean, Oklahoma's not known for ball hawking, get after the guy defense. They kind of sat back and they were like forcing him to make a decision. And he made those decisions. I mean, that touchdown pass to Giovanna Wims, that was a beautiful ball and even a better catch by Giovanna Wims.
I think the worst ball he threw all night was probably the last pass he threw when he tried to hit the tight end over the middle.
Isaac Nott, it was just a little. I mean,
it was kind of behind him.
Ball, but
that was probably the worst one.
So I think you go into that, you talk about Jalen Hurts on the other hand, and most Georgia fans, I feel like you could over and say, well, we just stopped Baker Mayfield, we could stop Jalen Hurts. Baker Mayfield, I don't think he definitely didn't play his best game.
He did what he had to do the first half, but the second half, they figured him out. I guess the defensive line just kind of kept him corralled so that he didn't make any big runs. And held their gaps, and then Roquan or the other linebackers just kind of flowed to wherever he was.
And I think that's one thing we saw. We're probably going to see with Jalen Hurts when he's in the pocket because he can hurt you with his legs, and they kind of just contain him. Those defensive ends, Bellamy and Carter, I think they were talented enough and knew they could get past their man, but they elected to contain him and say, we're just going to hold you right here.
Yeah, because if you get those defensive ends too far upfield, then you open yourself up to that hole right there in between the tackles and guards that little quarterbacks like. To me, Mayfield is a real quick, jerky type runner, and Jalen is like
a running back.
You can't. He has such long strides. You don't think he's really running that fast, but he's covering a lot of ground in a short amount of time.
I equate it to more of like looking Baker Mayfield, Johnny Manziel.
Yes.
It's kind of a herky-jerky, I'm going to just keep evading you and while I run. While Jalen Hurts is a smooth runner, and that's one thing they're going to watch out. I think that they're going to try to do some read option plays. I mean, with Hurts, we didn't see a lot of Baker Mayfield just design run plays. I think they had one quarterback draw like a counter with the quarterback, and he got like 20-something yards, which worked. But I think that definitely if Georgia is able to contain, that's going to do a lot and make Hurts throw the ball. Probably a better runner than he is as a passer.
I would say so.
But forcing him to throw the ball gives your defense a chance. And gives them a chance. The secondary played very well. Now, you're probably thinking there, well, this Georgia defense gave up 48 points. Well, that was to the number 1 offense in the nation.
And over 500 yards.
And over 500 yards. So you're probably saying, well, why should it? I think Alabama's going to be completely. Their styles are so different. Hurts is not going to come out there and throw for 400 yards. They're not going to sit back in the pocket and put it in a shotgun and say, all right, good. Now, do they probably have a better receiving core? I think maybe Oklahoma's more balanced, but Calvin Ridley's probably one of the top 5 receivers in the college football.
Right.
And I definitely going to key in on that. And I don't know who's going to guard him for Georgia. I don't know if they're going to try to do man on him. I know that one thing Georgia did, and it'd be interesting, they went man almost the entire second half.
Mm-hmm. And Baker, number 18, played really good. He probably had Lamb, number 5?
Yes.
He probably stayed with him most of that second half.
And one thing I think also to keep an eye on is Damian Harrison's ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, because we saw that did bite Georgia with the fullback, I can't remember his name,
number 36.
Oklahoma. He had a beautiful touchdown catch, but was scorching us on the first drive.
Oh, yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see if Alabama say, hey, if we can get Harris, out there in the backfield or run some underneath screens, see if we can get this Georgia defense on its heels early. And that's what Oklahoma did. But yeah, definitely the quarterback play. Which one's going to manage the game better? Is Jake Fromm going to have another performance like that where he's poised? I mean, this defensive line is going to get as good as Georgia's offensive line has played all year. This defensive line is going to get theirs.
Yes.
They're going to get some pressure on them. They're going to get some sacks on them. Is it going to be like, and we keep comparing this, is it going to be like the Auburn game in November at Jordan-Hare where the crowd was rocking and, it seemed like every play was a loss of 3 or 4 because he got sacked so many times? Or is it going to be where Auburn's defense couldn't do much against
another thing with Fitzpatrick, your best defensive player in the country, I think it's going to, when Georgia started out against Oklahoma, it was little, maybe 2 or 3 step drops, and he was hitting whims out there, for a 5 or 6 yard little out, little short right. I don't think they're as good as Fitzpatrick is. So,
No.
And I'm sure that they're going to put him on Georgia's best receiver,
which will probably be on Wims.
Yeah.
Has
So
a knack for getting the ball.
That little short, I wouldn't be surprised if he jumped that route at the very beginning of the game, because he's thinking they're going to try to start and do that stuff again
to
establish and get Jake comfortable. Because when they played Oklahoma, that was on first down, just like for the whole first half. That was kind of like his, he was
go-to route.
Yeah, he was just getting it out there really quick for a 7, 8, 9 yard gain.
Yeah, and a player like Minkah Fitzpatrick, who has been, we said it before, his coming out game was that 2015 game versus Georgia, where I think he had a scoop and score, maybe a pick 6. I think for him personally, he's going to be able to make a decision. He's talented enough, and I know that Nick Saban, their defensive Pruitt, trust him enough. If he thinks he can jump that route, he's going to go for it. And he's the kind of player that can adjust if he's wrong.
And they probably have the backup, the safeties behind him that can cover if he does make a mistake. If he goes and tries to jump that route and he misses it and Wims catches it,
probably not going to go much farther.
He's not. Yeah, he might. Go 5 or 6 yards more before that safety's probably going to be right on him.
Yeah, definitely that's a storyline. Minkah Fitzpatrick, that's a whole other one. Fitzpatrick versus Raquan Smith. Who's going to be? A lot of thought Raquan Smith's the best player. A lot of think Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to be decided there on the field. Too bad they can't go head-to-head against each other.
Raquan, like they say, you watch the Rose Bowl game, and Herb Street was talking about this, how Raquan not quite in sync the first half. It seemed like to me when the game started, it was like all these bright lights. Hey, we're out here in Pasadena. It's the Rose Bowl. We haven't been out here in 70 years. And it seemed to me that they were just kind of like a little bit in awe. And Oklahoma started that fast pace.
And Georgia's defense was on their heels.
They were just skating. I don't really think at halftime they changed much. They just got after it a little bit more, and Raquan just took it up to the next level. There was no getting away from him.
You saw his pursuit of Baker Mayfield, and Mayfield was. I did not know he was as strong, but there one place that got to me with Raquan had him.
Yeah.
And he was able to shed the tackle, but Raquan did enough to gain tackle, and I think that's one thing that's going to be important.
If he misses,
with Hurts, and one thing I said at halftime was if they're going to tackle, they're going to have hats on the ball and multiple guys, because we saw with Oklahoma when Chubb and Michelle broke tackles, you can't just go high on a guy like that.
No.
They're not going to be able to go high on Bo Scarborough and get away with it. Now the running back from Oklahoma, Anderson, played a phenomenal game. I don't know why. That's going to be a whole other show. Why did they go away from him?
Right. 200 yards.
We could do a whole hour show on specific plays that did not make sense, and that's
I even rewatched the Rose Bowl right after I watched it, and I was like,
some of those plays.
It just kind of you scratch your head and why didn't they keep doing that?
Yeah, especially as a Georgia fan, seeing how they were beating us that bad. But I think Georgia's going to be disciplined in their tackling, which they've been all year, except for that Auburn game. Right. They're going to have to wrap up on Harris and Scarborough. They're going to have to stay at home with Jalen Hurts and make sure that he doesn't make any crazy plays.
Right.
And then I think the last thing is Alabama's going to do the same. They're going to have to not be disciplined. And then you say that, and if the off chance that Nick Saban's watching this, he would say, "Do you really think I'm going to tell my guys to go tackle high on Nick Chubb and Sonny Michel?" But those guys are talented enough that Nick Chubb is going to break the tackles. Sonny he's had a neck for running over people this year, but he can make guys look bad in the open field.
Right.
And so staying at home, being disciplined defense, and I think it's just going to be whoever has the ball last, but maybe not in a 54-48 game.
No, I don't think it'll be that high.
But yeah, the defense I think that's going to be the story. Which defense can come out on top is Georgia's offense versus Alabama's defense. We know Georgia's defense is good. I think Georgia has the better offense, and I know that's probably going out on a limb and saying that. I think that some people are predicting. I think Fromm right now is in a better position on a roll, probably better than Jalen Hurts. Hurts after a fantastic freshman season. And we're saying this about a guy who's led his team to the national championship 2 straight years.
Right.
But I think Hurts has been a little bit erratic this year. We've had some great games, and some games you're like, I don't know what in the world's going on. So I think
but now with him playing 2 games a week apart, he may not be as erratic. That layoff of 4 weeks may have had a little bit to do with it. Because defenses on a long time off can still be defenses. Yeah. But offenses, it's about timing and, all that kind of stuff. You still have to be fresh. And when you're playing the scout team or whatever, I mean, it's just not, you can't compare it.
So yeah, we've talked about storylines, Kirby versus Nick. What's that going to be like? 2 minds, the brainchild. I thought that even though Kirby was a Georgia guy, it seemed like for 3 straight years, he's coming to Georgia, and he finally did. A lot of people, Alabama fans, thought he was going to be the heir to the throne in Tuscaloosa. Whenever Saban decides he's just tired of winning, then Kirby's going to take over.
I don't know how you get tired of that.
We're talking about limiting turnovers. Georgia didn't have any. They had the one with Sonny Michel in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
They were able to bounce back from, but forcing the Baker Mayfield. Which team can force the turnover, and which team can not allow? That's going to be a huge.
I think so.
I think battle. We talked about Raquan and how he's going to play against Hurts. We saw he's had the challenge, and they're going to be talking about. He did Baker Mayfield, like he played well against him. Well, now he's got to come back against another great quarterback, and that's just part of playing the playoff. And he embraces the challenge. The guys like this love the challenge of playing against the top competition.
And one thing I saw about Raquan too, it's like he knows what's going to happen before it happens. There were several times in that Rose Bowl game where defensive linemen were turning around looking at him, and he was like, "No, don't go there, go here."
Yeah.
Or, move over here to this gap, don't move to that gap. And then when they got into overtime and that little pass out to the flat to number 24, what's his name for Oklahoma? The running back?
Anderson.
Yeah. If you watch it, Roquan is already leaning toward the line of scrimmage like a good linebacker ought to do. And as soon as he sees him go, as soon as he takes a step, he's gone.
He can see he has a knack, and Minkah Fitzpatrick has it too. These kind of guys have a knack for knowing where the ball is going to be before anyone else does.
Right. And all that is, that's just football smarts. That's
a high football IQ, right?
Right. And doing things over and over and over again, and watching your keys and picking up on stuff.
So I think that's the big storyline is Raquan. How's he going to play against them? And then. Not to go on it for very long as we're starting to wrap up here, but special teams. We talked about the play by, Harris County, former Harris County player Tay Crowder. That didn't ricochet. That was an amazing read.
He saw it.
And I'm sure Kirby said, watch out. Get ready for
anything.
You're right. He snags it. One thing that's going to be Rodrigo Blankenship.
He missed the 48-yarder.
You're like, oh gosh, here we go. They're going to go back up again. Even Baker Mayfield, throwing it out there saying it's game over.
Yeah.
But then comes back.
Sets a Rose Bowl record.
It's 31-14. We get, Georgia gets the ball. He kicks the field goal. Everyone's like, okay, it's 31-17. But Rodrigo is running around the field like it's Christmas morning. The guy is sitting there in his goggles and his mustache, and he's thrilled that he just kicked a 55-yarder. But that was a huge turning point.
Yeah.
That sucked the wind out of Oklahoma right there for them to be able to.
But
so that's going to be a big thing, too.
Yeah, you still didn't know. Even those 3 points, Oklahoma's getting the ball the first part of the third quarter. You
got to require a stop.
You got to stop
to even be within 7.
Right.
But Kirk Herbstreit said this. 31-14. That sounds like, oh my gosh,
we got to score 3 times.
17. That's a score, a stop, and a score. That's all that is.
Right.
You're tied, and that's exactly what Georgia did. They were able to get stops. So I think special teams is going to be key. No special teams mistakes. Georgia special teams in the past years have been really nerve-wracking. You're nervous.
And in the Auburn game at Auburn this year, that was nerve-wracking.
So I think Kirby's going to have faith in Rodrigo because that was a big-time moment. Also to come back as he's only a sophomore and he's a walk-on. He just received a scholarship a couple weeks ago.
Right.
He was able. At the beginning of the season, he was able to knock down field goals at a pretty tough angle in overtime that would have decided if Georgia goes to Atlanta.
Right.
Georgia was headed back to Atlanta regardless.
Well, he does have a pretty good little coach over there on the sidelines, that former Chicago Bear Kevin Butler.
Yeah, Kevin Butler, whose son was the punter for Georgia a couple of years back.
And who is famous for the 60-yard field goal against Clemson back in my day.
And you're yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's gonna be a big storyline. And then Alabama saw special teams. You know, Minka Fitzpatrick has been a return guy for Alabama. Can those guys create space? That field position. Georgia's average in the second half where they started was 41, their own 41. I mean, you're looking at 20, 30 yards to get into field goal range. Oklahoma's 17 yards.
Yeah.
You know, Alabama, that they dominated because they were pinning Clemson so far back. And even when Alabama got far back, methodical drives to take the wind out of the sails. And then
even if they didn't score, they moved the ball deeper back.
You know, when the score was 10-6, to me it felt like it was 42-0. That's just how Alabama plays. They did that, and they've done that all year. And Georgia has. Someone said that Georgia's probably the most consistent team all year. I mean, except for the one game against Auburn, and we keep talking about that. I mean, they just got the.
We're giving you a shout out, Auburn fans.
I mean, yeah, and you know, Auburn fans are probably mad as well. They beat both these teams.
But we beat you once.
But Georgia beat you once, and I can't speak for Alabama.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be big, especially where they start, because when Alabama had that long, I remember they had one. It was about a 95-yard drive against Clemson, and then Clemson's defense is just wore out, and then they pin them down within their own 20, and Clemson's like, we're only down 10-6, but it feels like it's 42-0. And that's what Alabama, they wear you down to on the scoreboard, it's 10-6, 7-0, but you're like, if we don't score here, the game's over. And that's exactly what happened. Is they didn't have this offensive onside that you're like, oh my gosh, Georgia put up 54 points. I mean, they only put up 24 points, but it felt like it was 42-3. I mean, they just that's what Alabama can do to you with their methodical drives. And
even though you're very close, you look over there and you're going, we can't get past these guys.
And I think special teams is going to set the tone for that. Where does the field position start? Who can start a better field position? The punting game. Punters don't get talked about enough. And Georgia's punters stepped in this year and had a really good year, and so is J.K. Scott for Alabama.
So Rodrigo, normally, I noticed this, he kicks it out of the end zone, but did you notice how many times he kicked it short that they could get it and take off running and to return the kickoff, and they wouldn't even make it to the 25-yard line?
Yeah, and that's something you're playing with chance there when you're doing it, but Georgia's.
They covered them like a blanket. I mean, I don't think they ever got it past the 25-yard line when they returned it.
You know, that's stuff that they work on in the summer, and you know, just shells, helmets, and shorts. They're working on kick coverage, punt coverage, and Georgia did a great job of that. Alabama did a great job of that. Both these teams are so well disciplined. They got 5 stars littered all over the field. I mean, I remember when Alabama's playing. Y'all remember? You definitely remember Reuben Foster, who played Auburn High School, not too far away from here. I mean, for his first 2 years of his Alabama career, he was on kickoff.
Right.
I mean, and
wasn't even a starter.
And lit guys up. That's just the talent these guys have, and to know what I was saying, they just want to be a part of it. And special teams is definitely going to set the tone. But as we wrap up here, the last thing I want to say, and we'll try to, this is probably one of the biggest storylines, I will try to keep it short, is there an effect on Georgia after playing a very emotional double overtime game? And before I put it to you to see what you think, Alabama relatively, after the first half, cruised to a victory. I mean, it was 24-6, which is not a very wide margin of victory.
But against Alabama,
but they cruised it. They cruised there. Georgia had laid everything out on the field as they should have. I mean, had to come back from that 24 unanswered points, dealing with the drama, but also Alabama had a flight to New Orleans, gets to come back. Kirk Herbstreit said it best. It's like Alabama played against LSU and comes back. Physical game. Comes back to Atlanta. Georgia pretty much played, and if it's
USC.
a regular season, because it's only with a USC, UCLA, and then it's got to get all the way back and get ready for another national championship. Now, do I think I heard this as well. Well, is Georgia going to be able to get up for it? If you don't think Georgia's going to be able to get up for the national championship, because this is your goal in summer and spring workouts, I think they're going to be fine, but definitely it's something to look at. Is how does that take them out emotionally? Not a lot of injuries, though. As Alabama suffered some injuries, I think it's Jennings.
He's
out for the rest of the year. He had
surgery today or
yesterday, and so he's done for the year. So that'll be something to look in the future to see how they're going to feel. Which they'll probably just throw another 5-star in there, as Nick Saban always does. But yeah, is there an effect on Georgia having played an emotional game, given all they had, and then traveling all the way back?
I read somewhere where I think Kirby even addressed that in the locker room after the game was over. He was telling his kids, don't exert any more energy or, than you have to, because we've got to go back. We've got to get focused because in 6 days, we're playing for the national championship, and there can be no excuses. You can't say, if Alabama comes in there and beats Georgia 31-10,
you don't want
or even if it's close, like 21-20, you can't say, hey, well, we spent so much energy out there in California that this is the national championship game. You don't know when you will make it back there. Like Clemson. Clemson's the number one team in the country. They were probably thinking, hey, we beat Alabama round 3. We're right back where but hey, they got beat. They're not there. They're not playing for the national championship again.
And this is also, I know Georgia's in the SEC, so definitely Georgia hears about it all the time. This is Alabama. This is Nick Saban. I know we're in the state of Alabama. I might step on toes. Possibly the greatest coach of all time. Bear Bryant's rolling over in his grave right now, and people are running up to the restaurant right now to come get me. But I think that the lore of this, the storylines we talked about, Alabama, Kirby versus Nick. Can Kirby become the first coach ever that's coached under Nick to win a game? And
it's almost like
a game to win it, the national title. But you're playing Alabama. Everyone's like, oh, the SEC is not that good. It's just Alabama. Well, Georgia's out here to prove, no, we're there too.
Yeah, I know Auburn lost their bowl game, but at the peak when they were playing their best, if you take Auburn, Alabama, and Georgia, I would put them against any team in the country. Any team.
Yeah.
I think is like you say, Kirby going to be the first one to. It's almost like a David and Goliath type thing. Georgia's David, Alabama's the Goliath, and you got to knock them off the perch if you want to be the man. So. And
I'll tell you one thing. I think Georgia wanted to play Alabama. They playing. Georgia Clemson. That's an old school rivalry that they would have loved to play. But Georgia wanted to chase Alabama because they didn't want Alabama to sit there and think that even though we didn't get to play them for the SEC. So this is going to be it. And so moving into the last part here, the picks and who is your player.
I've gone. I want to say I was half right in the pick. I picked Clemson to beat Alabama, but I was half right because I picked the Alabama offensive line to be the difference maker, and they were. I think this is a low-scoring game. I think it's a physical game. I think it's, you may be dragging bodies off of the field after this thing's over. To me, I'm picking, I'm a red and black guy. I'm a dog fan, so I can't go against the dogs, and I think it's going to be close. I think there's going to be field goals involved, like you say. I'm picking Georgia 23-20 to win it.
33-20?
23-20.
Oh, 23-20. Okay. And then who's your player? Who's your group? You had a group last time.
There's obvious ones there. Do you pick the obvious ones, or do you go with somebody that nobody's really thinking about? It's 3 players to me. I saw on the sidelines, I don't know if people caught this, I think it may have been during the overtime part. I think it was between the first and second overtime. And Kirby had Roquan, Michelle, and Chubb talking to
right
him.
there.
Those are my 3 players.
Yeah.
Roquan's going to the pros. He's a junior, but he's going to the pros.
He's a surefire.
He's a
top 15, top 20 pick.
And those 2 running backs, they may not be the most dynamic runners or the big name runners, but when they make it to the NFL, you'll have no problem with those 2 guys doing their job. So those are my 3. Will both runners get over 100 yards? I don't know. They may combine for 150, 180. But yeah, those are my 3 guys.
Well, I picked Alabama to win the Sugar Bowl, and I picked Georgia to win the Rose Bowl. So you said you were half right. I was completely right.
Yes, you were 2 for 2.
Completely right. I was 2 for 2 on that. And I think, first off, I'm going to say my player, I think it's going to come down to which defense makes the biggest play, and then I think that puts you in the position of the pass rush. That defensive line for Alabama with Hand and Payne in there. We saw the big guys up front making some plays, getting the interception, and then they put him in on offense, and he
scores
got
a
touchdown. He said he has golden hands. So I think that's going to be huge. How can Georgia's offensive line? I think that's mine. You picked Clemson's offensive line. I think last
No,
year. And
Alabama's offensive line. Yeah.
I'm going to pick Georgia's offensive line. How can, and specifically the right side, redshirt freshman and Ben Cleveland, true freshman and Andrew Thomas. You just got done playing against Oklahoma. Granted, Oklahoma's defense is not Alabama's,
Right.
but big time situation. Now you're in the biggest game of your career to this point. You're in the biggest stage that one of the biggest stage you'll ever be on.
The president may be there.
Yes, the president will be there. Everyone's going to be watching. How do you perform against the best of the best?
Right.
So my two guys are Ben Cleveland and Andrew Thomas. How does that right side of the offensive line protect me? And then my third guy, you said you had three guys, I'm going to take three of them. Mine is Jake Fromm. I think Georgia's rushing game is going to get not 350 yards, probably closer to 200.
250 maybe.
250, something like that. But how does Jake Fromm do? Probably going to have to make more plays than he did. The biggest play he made
Maybe
was
with his feet.
Maybe with his feet. And he did that and arm on one play that stood out to me in the Oklahoma game. Evades a would-be tackler.
Yeah.
Just kind of moves around him and then moves up in the pocket and dumps off to Sonny Michel, which was like a 2nd and 12, I think it was. Ends up turning first down and leading Georgia to that game-time drive there at the end of regulation.
Right.
So those are my three guys. My prediction, I'm going to stay, I can sit here and say that and be the anti-person and say, I'm just going to be objective and say that I think Alabama's going to win. It is, to me, if Alabama opens up as a 4-point spread, it'll probably get closer come Sunday afternoon.
Right.
I think Georgia's going to come out victorious, and I think one thing, you never want to go off emotion and this idea of destiny, but like Oklahoma had that game. They should have won that game. And somehow Georgia fought back, and that's something I've never seen out of a Georgia team. I was fully expecting for them to not fold, but just not be able to, or go to some wacky thing. I think if Jim Chaney stays true to the play calling and said we're going to be true to who we are and not try to sit there and air it out, I think Georgia's got a real good shot. And I think this Georgia defense has answered every single challenge. The one that they didn't answer in the Auburn game, they answered.
And they're not hurt. And they're not hurt.
And I think the injuries are, even though Alabama is a good team, they're going to be able to put in guys. I think the consistency of Georgia, I think consistency in the long run wins out. And Georgia's been consistent long enough. Alabama definitely silenced a lot of that. There is no question Alabama should have been the playoff. They proved that. And
if Georgia hadn't gotten to play Alabama in this national championship game, that would always be in the back of their mind. If Georgia had to play Clemson and they beat Clemson, always in the back of their mind is, hey, we didn't beat Alabama, and that's who we probably, like you said, I think that's really who they wanted to play, because that's the standard that you go by, and that's, like I say, if you want to be the top dog, then you got to beat the top dog.
So you picked 23-20
by
a field goal. I'm going to say the final score is 28. 28-27. I think Georgia's going to have to do something crazy to get to 25, and I think Rodrigo, the folklore hero, is going to come out there and kick a field goal, because I'm telling you, there's no person more excited. If y'all could have seen his reaction, if y'all saw his reaction, the teams that walk on the field like, okay, we're still down by 14, and Rodrigo's running around like a kid. I'm pretty sure Kirby Smart wanted to say, hey, bud,
it's a Rose Bowl record, baby.
But it's a Rose Bowl record, 55 yards, but I think Georgia's going to take it home. Right now, they look like that team of destiny. This is the last thing we'll get to say before the game, and as I know we're going a little bit longer here today, but it is a big game.
All right.
We have been very fortunate, and they said this on some of the major networks, we've been very fortunate to have amazing sporting events over the past year.
Yeah.
Starting all the way back with, and this is getting to all sports, the Cubs won the World Series.
Yep.
The Astros World Series run last year.
Yep.
Dare I say it, the Super Bowl last year that I still don't acknowledge exists. That game in February last year.
Yes.
But that one, regardless, that's a great game. The Alabama-Clemson game, the first one, Alabama-Clemson last year. And now this one. Just some great sporting events. And I think it's going to be one for the ages.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll top the Rose Bowl, but it's definitely going to be a great game.
It'll be hard to do.
But yeah, that's all the time we have for today.
Hey, let's run You wanna
Yeah,
do that?
definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks once again to Giovanna's for letting us come here and do the show. Make sure to visit the #1 rated pizzeria in the Bi-City, Columbus, Phenix City area. And I
That's
know we're
right.
about to get some good food
Yep.
here in a second. But yes, make sure we do have our shirts. You can see right here, the Crowded Booth t-shirts, $10 a piece. Make sure to email us at thecrowdedbooth@gmail.com, or just go ahead and comment on any of our stuff on social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We want to get a shout out to people who have already ordered. We have Will from Columbus, Georgia. He's got a shirt coming to him. That's Jeff from Talbot County, Georgia. And Jeff, that's just because we're sure not what city you live in. Cameron from Athens, Alabama.
Cameroon.
The wrong Athens. I
That's
might
right.
say Cameron. Donnie from Fontana, North Carolina was able to snag one. And then Mildred from Winter Park, Florida.
Winter Park, Florida.
So all over the area, thanks for watching. We hope you tune in, and definitely tune in Monday night at 8 p.m. Thanks. This has been the Crowded Booth, and we've been previewing the National Championship game. You all have a great afternoon.
Thank you.